Saturday night, Lucas Oil Stadium, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Can't wait to be there. My first trip there.
We will be there at the game. Penn State versus Oregon. Oregon 3.5-point favorites right now. They enter the Big Ten championship as the sole undefeated team in college football. Undefeated teams in conference championship games are 37-17 straight up since 1992. But when they're favored under 5 points, they're just 6-9 straight up in those games.
Hey, James Franklin playing with house money, bro.
Speaking of James Franklin, I'm glad you brought him up.
Yeah.
We all know what kind of coach he is. He's 7-25 straight up as an underdog, and he's 92-15 straight up as a favorite. Penn State has not won a game outright as an underdog since September of 2021 against Wisconsin, losing 9 in a row. And against top 5 opponents, Franklin's 1-16 straight up, 5-12 against the spread in his coaching career at Penn State and at Vandy. Oregon fans are, I would think, similar to Texas, first year in the conference. They'll probably travel to Indy, kind of get a taste of it.
Yep.
They're also going to have a lot of travel, probably a lot more in Texas, kind of being on one coast. They're going to have a lot more travel here in the next couple weeks. Penn State hasn't been in this game since 2016. Interestingly enough, Ross Dellinger tweeted out, and I sent it to you last night, some of these prices, these get-in prices for these championship games, which you and I got tickets, back when they came out, kind of figuring maybe it's Oregon, Ohio State. That didn't pan out. I think Ohio State fans are dumping a lot of their tickets right now. And also it's the fact that both these teams are safely in. This game is not a play-in game anymore. So it's not necessarily like a super important game for a lot of these fans when you are thinking we might have, 3 other places to travel. Might have to go to Pasadena, might have to go to Dallas, might have to go to Atlanta. All these different places you might have to travel here in the next month and a half.
Yep.
Why would you go to Indianapolis? So it's interesting. It's an interesting dichotomy here. Also, with number 1 versus number 3, like you mentioned in our Georgia segment, we talked about if Oregon loses this game, would Penn State move up to that 1 seed or would they fall to the 2 seed if Georgia were to win? So we just don't know. There's a lot of unknowns here. With the spread of 3.5, though, just getting right into the nuts and bolts of it, why would we not be betting Oregon?
I'm glad you asked. I thought the same thing originally on the surface. I also was shocked that the line was that low. I told you and guessed the spread. I think I said, 6.5 is what I thought it was. So I was about 3 or 4 points off. So I had to do some digging and into some nuggets into the matchup here. And again, I'm going to give some numbers here, kind of like I did in regards to the Georgia-Texas game. This was very surprising to me. Listen to how close all this is, and listen to how many numbers that Penn State is ahead of Oregon in. Total defense, Penn State's 4th in the nation and Oregon 7th in the nation. Scoring defense, Penn State 6th in the nation, Oregon 9th in the nation. Rush defense, Penn State 7th in the nation, and Oregon is 22nd in the nation. Turnover margin, Penn State +7, Oregon +5. Pass defense, Penn State is 7th and Oregon's 8th. Tackles for a loss, Penn State is 18th, Oregon is 33rd. Oregon is 6th in the nation in sacks. They're really good at getting after the quarterback. Penn State is ranked 6th in the nation in giving up sacks. Total offense, Oregon's 15th and Penn State's 19th. And you think Oregon, high-flying offense, Penn State, they're not really that good offensively. They're still kind of bueno. Nicky's done a good job this year with Penn State, but it's still just not, one of your big-time offenses in college football. You don't really think that about Penn State. I just told you there's only 4 spots difference in total offense. Scoring offense, Oregon's 35 points per game and Penn State's 33 points per game. All of those numbers, that's like a ton of numbers I just gave you on both sides of the ball. They're all extremely close. And Penn State actually is better in a lot of those categories, ahead of them in a lot of those categories. Again, those numbers don't just mean that you're a better football team or anything, but it's just interesting that they were as close as they were. As far as the actual matchup in this game on the field, dude, I think it really comes down to Penn State's got some NFL dudes on that defense. They absolutely do. They absolutely do. And they've got a guy that your game plan on offense could be one thing, and then it could be a totally different thing because it is completely wrecked because of Abdul Carter, pass rusher for Penn State, linebacker for Penn State. There have been games where you've seen that dude get completely turned loose. And again, this is one of those. I've heard Greg McElroy talk about this. He talked about it with Ole Miss this year and some of their bigger games, the game against Georgia. You saw Ole Miss look like sharks in blood-infested waters. That's because they've got guys that are front runners that they know that that's an NFL money game going against Georgia. This is a money game for some of your big-time NFL draft prospects for both of these teams. But a guy like Abdul Carter that is already projected to be a pretty high NFL draft pick, he goes out in a game like this and just wrecks it and is just living in the backfield, draft stock up even more. Makes more millions of dollars in a game like this. So, and we've seen Oregon have some issues here and there throughout the year. The offensive line has gotten so much better since they fixed it earlier in the year. But still, they haven't faced a pass rusher like Abdul Carter. Also, Penn State's got two really good corners that have played really well this year. So it's interesting to see what they're going to do against Tez Johnson and some of those receivers for Oregon. Oregon's got some of the best collection of weapons in the entire country. But the last thing that worries me the most, if I'm thinking about Penn State, the thing that worries me the most, and I think I can see Tyler almost smirking about it, I think he's probably agreeing with what I'm about to say. The overall speed differential in this game. Like, there's times when you watch Penn State, like I remember in the first half against USC.
I knew you were going to say that. Yep.
First half against USC, Penn State looked like they just took a bunch of guys from the movie Hoosiers and put Ollie and Jimmy Chitwood and some of those in football uniforms, and they were chasing around USC skill position players. And I don't know what happened. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that know way more about X's and O's. But Penn State came out in the second half and completely flipped the switch. But still, the difference in the skill position players overall from Oregon and Penn State, it definitely is different. It's completely different. It's like a big difference in speed. And the fact that Penn State I just can't believe that a high-level P4 program like a Penn State, that they don't have in 2024 college football. I mean, their receivers, man, overall are just garbage. They are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's just call it what it is. Like, in comparison to, like, other, like, big-time, top-tiered college football teams. Now, they got Tyler Warren, the tight end, who is one of the most exciting players in college football that can take over a game. And they've got Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. And Kotelnicki, depending on the rumors that you're hearing, is he entertaining the West Virginia job this week? Is he as dialed in as he needs to be to call up ball plays against Oregon? I have no idea the answer to that question. I'm assuming he is dialed in for this week, obviously in a Big Ten championship game. But I just don't know as far as manufacturing offense overall for Penn State. I mean, Oregon's got some really good DBs that are NFL players. I don't know how Penn State's receivers are going to get open. They're going to have to manufacture. They might have to run a play where Tyler Warren lines up and snaps the ball from the tight end position and then runs down the seam and catches jump balls. They may have to do stuff like that in this game. And I also just don't necessarily trust Drew Aller either.
Yeah.
I tried my best, man, to want to try to back Penn State in this game. I actually do think, again, it's another one. I do think it's going to be a really good. I think we're going to see a good one. I do think James Franklin playing with house money. The last time that Penn State won a Big Ten championship was in 2016 when they replaced both coordinators going into the season. That's what they did this year. Oregon, we saw what they did in the Pac-12 championship game last year against Washington. Got thumped against Washington in the Pac-12 title game.
Yeah.
I do kind of wonder. I think Oregon's going to win, man. But I do think it's going to be a really good game, and it won't shock me if Penn State defensively can cause a lot of problems for Oregon.
Yeah, I do kind of wonder if we've been talking about these games, and we're saying, maybe one of these teams angles for the 5 seed and whatnot. Maybe both these teams, knowing they're safely in the playoffs, and they're just kind of playing for a first round bye here in a Big Ten championship, but a first round bye. Do you see them opening up the playbook a little bit more, maybe trying some things out that maybe they can use, future playoff games? And, I mean, we've seen Nittany in that USC game pull out that formation and he shifted everybody, and Tyler Warren was the center. He snapped it, right? And he threw the ball down to the center. Like, stuff like that. Will you see Oregon do some stuff like that on offense? I don't know. It'll be interesting to kind of see, if they kind of play a little bit. If that changes James Franklin's mindset, like that fourth quarter of the Minnesota game where he went for that fake punt, is he a little more aggressive because, hey, we're in the playoffs, like we're fine, like it is what it is. And if this pays off, great. If not, okay. Like we know Dan Lanning's going to be aggressive, but will James Franklin be more aggressive is the question.
I think I could be wrong. I know in the bigger games he normally doesn't, but I mean that fake punt that he did in the fourth, like late in the fourth quarter against Minnesota recently, that was insane. Awesome that he did that, and he needed to do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, but both of these teams, like, Oregon here recently on the road at Wisconsin had a scare. Penn State went on the road at Minnesota, had a scare.
Yeah.
And when I took a deep dive into this, man, these teams really aren't that far apart at all in from the metrics when you look into it. So that's why I think it's going to be. I just think at the end of the day, the speed differential. I trust Dylan Gabriel more. And early in his career, it's early in his career, but Dan Lanning was not known to be some big game coach either until he beat Ohio State, which, we can make an argument for that too, that Ryan Day is not a big game coach either. But it won't shock me, man. If it will not shock. We're not going to be scared to pick games. I'm making you pick it too. You got to throw out a winner. I think Oregon wins the game, but I think it is a one possession game. And it won't shock me at all if this is somewhere between, I think it's going to be a one possession game, but Oregon wins. And I think the speed differential between both teams is what ends up doing it.
I think one of the most important players in the game is Jordan James, running back for Oregon. And I think that if he can run the ball and they can run the ball effectively, similarly as they did to Ohio State, I think they'll be in control of the game. Like you said, I don't think Penn State can manufacture points through the air. They're going to have to somehow hit big plays on the ground with their running backs. You might see a little bit more of Bo Prabula running a little, RPO option, stuff like that. So
they're going to have to manufacture offense differently than Oregon. Yep, I agree.
And the numbers and the metrics, I get all that. I understand all that. I understand where you're coming from. I'm sure that they've been super close to Ohio State every time they played them, and Ole Miss last year, and this has never worked out in their favor. Like we've always said about Penn State, they beat the teams that they're supposed to, and they lose to the teams they're supposed to.
Yep.
And I don't think that changes Saturday night. I'm taking Oregon. I'm taking Oregon to cover. So
it was 3.5, right?
3.5.
Okay. Is that a best bet?
Not a best bet.
Okay.
Not a best bet.